Hello, beautiful souls. I'm your host, Nicole, and welcome to the Intuition Age. My intention for this podcast is to cultivate a sacred space where we can collectively evolve into higher states of conscious and self-awareness. I believe that the sustenance and purpose of our being is already located within the depths of our souls. We just have to rediscover and realign with it. It's time to go inward to find all the answers, clarity, and knowledge we seek. So let's journey within. Welcome, old souls, because I have no doubt if you are tuning into this episode, you have lived multiple lifetimes. On this episode, we'll be exploring the multifaceted, multidimensional, multi-existing aspects of our souls within the contemplative context of past lives or many lives. I have always been fascinated with the concept of past lives and the evolution of my consciousness throughout eras, dimensions, and galaxies. In my personal exploration, I have found present-day healing, purpose, and wholeness when regressing into past life realities. I innately know myself to be a complex and evolved soul. I carry this profound intrinsic knowledge that could only be attributed to other existences. But for the many lifetimes I channel my soul to have lived, I have very little recollection of my many realities. And this is what ignites my curiosity. I find myself contemplating existential past life questions regularly. If time isn't linear, do past lives really exist? What are in between lives? Is my consciousness currently split up between all the lives I've lived? Will my soul ever just be fragments of stardust? So, here to explore and ponder these profound wonderings with me is my beautiful cosmic sister, Shannon Amrein. She is the owner of Healing Intuitively, 23rd Dimension Akashic Record Keeper, quantum energy healer, and co host of the Prismatic Heart of the Seven Sisters podcast. Shannon has such remarkable past life remembrances to share, all about galactic councils, Atlantean, Egyptian, elemental, and more. This is an episode worth listening to in its entirety. And if you're yearning for more conscious conversations between Shannon and I, tune into our Akashic Records and Mental Health and Spirituality podcast episodes, which will all be linked in the show notes below. Now, without further ado, let's explore the many lives of the soul. Hi, Shannon. Welcome back to the Intuition Age. How are you?
Hi, Nicole. I am so happy to be here. I'm really good. Yeah. Lots has changed.
Yes, I had so much fun recording our first episode together, the Akashic Records episode. So if anyone hasn't listened to that, I definitely encourage them to tune into that first. But yeah, why don't you give us an update? Because we recorded that, I think, back in July or August. Yeah. So what has changed these past few months for you?
Yeah, well, first off, I do agree. The Akashic Records episode, I think, will definitely inform everything we're going to get into here. But yeah, so since the last time we recorded, I have moved from France, which is where I was. I was going to naturopathy school, and I left the program because I just wasn't happy. I didn't think it was a great program for what I want to do. So I am currently in Arizona, which is like, I could never have imagined that. In July, I think it was July that we talked. I could never have imagined that. So I'm there now. This is where I am, and kind of just really learning surrender. Like I had this experience last night where I just had like some human stuff come up, and so I sat down before I went to bed and I was meditating, and I was just like, okay, I literally don't know how I'm supposed to do all of this stuff right now. Like it's kind of felt like everything's good that changes, but it has kind of felt like life has imploded a little bit. So I literally was just like, okay, just show me whatever you want me to do. I completely surrender. I don't even care anymore. Just like I'm here. So that's what I'm really like learning right now is that. But that's kind of the quick update.
And then how's the 23rd dimension, the rainbow realm? I know you spoke about that in our last episode. So how's that doing?
Yeah, it's good. I keep on obviously always going deeper, and the fun thing has been the last few months I've been connecting even more with I talked about the Council of the Pinnacle is sit in the 23rd dimension, and I am part of that council. I think I may have mentioned that last time, and
No,
the
you
last few months,
tried and it didn't let
okay,
us record.
that's what I tried. We tried to say that and it completely like twice cut out. Um, well, they've let me more and more, not even let me, they just invited me more to like come sit at like meetings. So it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, I really need to go into the records. And then I like, they kind of energetically bring me into like, my human self. I think it's like my brain needs something to see. Into like almost like a boardroom is how it comes to me. And like sit in the council. So yeah, it's fun. It's always more discovery there.
So interesting because today's topic is about past lives. So I actually just kind of want to start with, is that 23rd dimension pinnacle council life of yours a past life, or is that a future life, or is that kind of your higher self embodiment existing right now?
Um, I it's my higher self embodiment. So like the way that they've explained it to me, and I've like seen it even in past life regressions, which we'll talk about, is that's like my higher self. So I'm always connected there. And probably I would guess when I'm done being a human, that's where I'll like stay in spirit form. But I don't think that will be anytime soon.
I'm just so happy that our internet didn't cut off and that was able to get recorded, because I definitely further in the episode want to discuss like what happens after our last lifetime, whether we're human, whether we're star being, whether we're an animal, what's going to happen to our souls. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you kind of brought that up, and we'll definitely discuss more. So past lives, though, very, very, very interesting topic. There has been quite a bit of research recently, I feel like, on past lives and a lot of like hypnosis and just past lives as like a healing mechanism
Mhm.
for a lot of issues and problems here in like this projected reality. So both of us kind of had past life regressions recently, but it wasn't our first interaction with our past lives. So I kind of want us to discuss our most recent past life regressions and kind of any like signals and channeled messages we get in regards to just previous past lives as well. Let's just start with like, what's your understanding of a past life
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Kind of ease
before
ourselves
I
in.
turn into Plato and get too philosophical?
So the way I understand a past life is, well, it's kind of a human thing, right? To put past in front of it, because I know we've talked about this, like we make up time, like time doesn't really exist. So, um, but in a linear sense, a past life is a life that we've lived in a time period before 2020, before right now, before where we are. Um, it's other places our souls have been. So I use the term past life. A lot of us do, just because it's like the widely accepted term. You could even just say other lives or multidimensional lives. So when, and tell me if this is your experience too, but when I go into past lives, if I go in through the records or in a regression, I do experience it because I'm in a human body. I do experience it as like this happens linearly in the past. Um, this is what my soul was doing in like this time period. But even, oh, I'm trying, like my brain is like, oh, we're gonna make this connection here. Even even then, like we can say it's past, but we can even like if we want to take the past out of it and just because it is just other lives, just in different time periods, like and they're literally in the past. So I feel like I just went on a little bit of like a weird kind of philosophical
Yeah.
turn, like tangent there, but
It
essentially
happens
it's
on the
life.
show all the time.
Yeah, that's what people come here to listen for, like listen
So
to.
why can't we then, I guess, like parallel and quantum jump into these timelines if they're still kind of just coexisting? Because like I don't want to be stuck in 2020. I'd love to like revert back to the 1300s or like
Yeah.
BC times.
I know. So I don't have a full answer for that, but the first thing that popped into my mind is actually tomorrow I'm starting my shamanic apprenticeship. And one of the things we're like going to do is she said, we're going to literally learn, she's going to literally teach me how to jump those dimensions physically.
Okay,
So
well,
I'm like,
you're coming back to let us know how that goes.
yeah. So if I figure that out, I'll let you know. But I think, I don't know. It's like our soul is aware of this one timeline right now, like waking and consciousness. But then, in dreams, do you sometimes have dreams where you're like, it seems like you're in a different place?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, for some reason, our souls want to be in this timeline, which is, yeah, sometimes annoying because, like, who wants to be in 2020 right now?
Right. Because, yeah, like with my past life channeling and regressions, I do feel like just in everyday life, I do feel like my past lives, and we talk about this all the time, but just like coexisting right now, like I feel how so many past life traumas are affecting my life and my projected reality right now. But how do we jump into that reality again? How do we see our form in that reality? What's kind of keeping us here, like in this material, three-dimensional projected reality 2020 right now? It's something that I feel like I contemplate all the time and I don't have an answer to it, but
Yeah, I don't.
it's great that we could use like hypnosis and meditation and just tapping into higher dimensions too to really show us these lifetimes. But it'd be nice if we could like physically jump into them sometimes.
It would be. I really, I wish we could easily. I don't know why. I don't really have a good answer either. Like I said, I don't know, but this did come to mind. I have heard other past life like psychics say that essentially when we're on Earth, like our soul, sometimes for some of us, our soul like kind of splits itself to be into different bodies. So it's like, and our higher self, our soul is all the same, but like in physical bodies. And then that way we can like live multiple timelines at once. So maybe it's because like the part of the soul that we're inhabiting um, is in this current reality. But then also, I don't know that that's true for everyone. Like, I don't really feel like my soul is split in this life, but I feel like probably it has been in other incarnations because I like, with all of the lifetimes I know I've lived, I would imagine it has been. Otherwise, it's impossible. I've lived as many lifetimes since I like receive I have. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of an interesting thing too. Like maybe that's part of the reason why we can't jump because um, we're in multiple different bodies, and if it would be too confusing.
I didn't even consider that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
then how about if like different parts of your soul then become in this like one body? Like we channel all these different parts of our soul that are left in like Atlantis or Egypt or in like a different galaxy. And now they're all like coexisting in this one physical body. That's so complex. And I just
It's
feel like
super
our
overwhelming.
physical, human body would not be able to handle that.
Maybe as we move up in dimensions, like even 5D, I think is too low of a dimension for that all to come back together. But maybe like someday when the Earth is like in 70 or 90 or something, we'll be able to come back all of those parts of our soul and literally be in one body.
Can't wait for that day.
I know.
So I want to hear your thoughts on basically, do you think with all these timelines and lifetimes existing right now that I don't know how to phrase this to make it like understandable for everyone. Basically, do you think like we're the same age in each timeline? And when we die in this life, do we start over in those lifetimes too? Like, how exactly do you think it works with like everything coexisting?
Oh, I don't think we're the same age. I do think, like, because I have seen lifetimes that I'm sure are coexisting right now where I'm definitely older or younger. But then also, interestingly enough, I've had some stuff in 2020 that's come up to heal past life trauma. And I have been about the same age in those past lives as I am now. So, like, I don't think there's a cut and dry rule. Um, but then when we die in the current incarnation we're conscious of, um what I'm getting right now, because I don't have a human answer to that, is that our soul jumps to it might jump to a life that we already kind of are aware of if that life needs more healing or if it needs more work, or we come back as like a future, quote unquote future incarnation to do something new.
So when the work and the purpose is done in a certain lifetime, then that lifetime could just, I don't want to say like evaporate and be gone forever, but yeah, just kind of end. And then our soul could just reincarnate into either a previous lifetime that still needs healing or a new lifetime.
Yeah, that's what I would say that feels pretty right to me, because what I do, the reason like this makes sense to me is because I do a lot of past life like healing with people, and what I lead them through is, as we like go through a whole process, and at the end, whatever past life memory came up, um, I lead them through a process of like literally pulling all of the color and emotion out of like that picture of that past life, like it's a photograph, until it gets to a point where it just folds in on itself, and then we can like throw it in the fire or put it in a file, and to remember, depending on like how bad that life was, like if we wanted to remember it or not.
Yeah.
But like, so I see that as a life that the soul is done with. It exists in our soul's memory, but we don't have any reason to go back to it, even in a physical form or in hypnosis or anything. So it makes sense when I think of it that way, that if we've healed a life in this lifetime, we don't need to go back to it once we're done with this incarnation. But maybe if there's a life that we don't access in this lifetime, but there still has a lot of stuff there, maybe we'll go back to it and relive part of it or whatever, or we'll just go into a whole new incarnation if our soul is like, okay, I'm good, I'm complete with these lives, it's time for me to go to the next step.
So should we then be reverting back to these past lives to kind of close them off and finish our purpose in them, and then put them away in like a scrapbook or photo album and just that's it?
I think so. Yeah, that's why I think past life work is so important, because if we can close off the ties in this life, then we're free to move on, because we all have such huge purposes, and in all our different ways. And I think if we're not able to move on to a completely like quote unquote new incarnation next time, it's not that it's bad, but it's just, it gives our soul more work. So if we can like lessen that work in this life, it gives us a chance to like quantum leap further in our next lives and in this life too.
I think that's such a great point too, where I feel like I envision once I die, like I'm going to fast forward into like, I don't know, year 3000 or something, when realistically there may be lifetimes that I've already lived, like back in whatever, 18th century, like 17th, 16, even like BC era, that still need work and still need me to fulfill my purpose and still need meaning to it. So it's a really interesting concept where it's like maybe after this human lifetime, we're going to revert back to what we consider the past instead of like get reincarnated into like a future.
Yeah, that's kind of trippy to think about, isn't it?
Right?
Like, oh my God, I could like, in however many years when I die, I could wake up and be like in 3000 BC.
Like
Yeah.
living among like dinosaurs and cave people and like,
I mean, anything's possible.
So I'm curious though, what if we had lifetimes in places that just no longer exist? So maybe like mass destruction, war, even like, like a cosmic war too, where like our planet was destroyed and we had to relocate. What if there's still meaning and purpose that needs to be fulfilled in those lifetimes where the physical place no longer exists?
Yeah, so that's interesting. And one thing that comes up a lot when I work with people is I actually like work with a lot of people who are from, one of their soul's biggest like ties is to the planet Mintaka, which doesn't exist anymore. It's, I don't actually know what happened. I just know it doesn't exist. Like it's like a planet that used to be underwater. People who are from there, like I've seen other people say that the souls from Mintaka like always feel like they're homesick. And, a lot of them tell me too, like my personal clients are like, yeah, I always dream of like being in the water, which is so interesting. But I think it comes up. My point is, I think it comes up like those people come to this work in this lifetime because they can't go back to that place. It doesn't exist anymore. And, maybe, like the laws of physics, of quantum physics are kind of bendy. So maybe if you went back far enough in time, you could go back, but that's, that's a whole other, like we could get on a wormhole with like that, discussion. But I think these people come to this work in this lifetime because they need to tie up those loose ends, like homesickness, like you can't go back. Your soul's not going to go back to that planet. So let's tie it up in this life. Remember why you feel this, get rid of not get rid of, but like tie up the loose ends. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think the things that come up in this life are things that A, really need to be healed, and B, maybe they're not ones we can go back to because that just doesn't exist anymore, or or Earth needs like, Earth and the stars and the galaxy needs you to be able to move forward. So it brings it up now.
Hmm. That's such a good point. Because
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah. What do you do when you feel homesick to a place that ceases
Doesn't
to
exist.
exist right now? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not like you could just go back. Even I'm wondering, just like quantum leap back to that time when it did exist. Are you even able to do that when like that place physically isn't here anymore?
Yeah, I don't know. See, that's something that I'm not entirely sure about. I mean, you can definitely go back to your memories of being there, but can you quantum leap physically back there? I don't know. It seems
Even
like maybe
like
not
I'm
because it
thinking like
comes up.
especially because so many of us feel like we've had lifetimes on like Atlantis,
Mhm.
which I think geographically, yeah, that area is still there.
Under the ocean.
Under the
Yeah.
ocean. But yeah, like we could point it out on a map. That's the thing. Like, I guess that essence of it is still there, even though the physical body of it is down under, down in
Yeah.
the ocean somewhere. But yeah, I feel like we're going down a rabbit hole already. And I'm like, I want to keep this as understandable as possible. But I'm just like, my mind is running like 1,000 miles per minute right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Atlantis, I don't know that like personally, I have a lot of Atlantis memories, but I don't feel the like need, I don't feel like I ever need to go back to them. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if you could, because like you said, it does still exist, like the landmass does exist. But those are like when I think of those, it's like um even when I see them, I'm like, yeah, okay, this is done. Like I don't need to, it's not one that feels like I need to go back to except to like remember what happened and like the abilities I had. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder like how do you feel like when you think of your Atlantis like memories, do you feel like you like need to go back to them or do they feel like kind of complete? I'm curious now if that's just me.
Honestly, no, kind of complete too.
Yeah.
But then I do have cosmic lifetimes where I feel just like a part of me was just like destroyed and left there. Where like I know like cosmic wars existed in those areas and I was like displaced and had to move to like different planets, different galaxies. So it's weird that the Atlantis, which is literally like I know that ocean is still there. Like we
Yeah.
could fly over it or we could go to nearby countries that exist right now. But I just of course I want to travel those countries, but I feel no need to close that chapter. I feel like it's already been closed.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if it's something about being on Earth right now and like we're in human bodies and so it's easier to close that chapter even energetically because we're on in this planet as opposed to like all of the cosmic and other intergalactic memories that we have because we can't as easily we can't
Cause like,
travel there
yeah,
physically.
no, I agree. Cause I feel like we still feel the energy and the essence of Atlantis here on Earth.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like we could just like get on a spaceship and like travel to a different galaxy, the galaxy that we once resided in. Like it doesn't necessarily work like that
I
in this human
wish.
form. Imagine Elon
Imagine
Musk.
how amazing that would be if we could just be like, "All right, guys, like I want to come home and see you for a day. Like, come bring me a spaceship." Oh,
Like
it makes
Thanksgiving,
me
Christmas, and
yeah.
in other galaxies, I mean.
Oh my god, other galaxies and other dimensions both. Like, oh, that'd be amazing.
It literally would be the jet lag though. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Don't even want to think about it.
Or maybe we'd be able to circumvent that because they're more advanced than we are, and they can like give us like I don't know, like a potion or like a
Yeah, a
recipe
pill
or
or
something.
something. So I
Um,
do want to talk about though kind of the difference between past lives and parallel lives cuz yeah, I do when we were talking about getting reincarnated into past lives that already existed to kind of close chapters there. Would we be getting reincarnated into a parallel version of that or would it be the exact same incarnation that this frequency self already had when we were living in that lifetime?
that's a great question. Um, I guess I would say it depends. I'm not entirely sure. I think, um,
Because I was just thinking, I'm like, okay, if I get reincarnated into like a past life where like I died tragically, is
yeah,
that again going to reoccur? Or is there a way to kind of parallel jump into, I don't know, the same past life, but a different version of it?
yes, okay, yes, I do think we can do that. Yes, like if you are going back to a past life, like say, let's like take an example, like if you had a past life where you were burned at the stake for being a witch,
Haven't we all had those?
Yeah, like everyone who's here listening to this has definitely had that. That's like the number one thing all of us have had. So say you want to jump back to a life where you were burned at the stake as a witch and you needed to go back and like fill that, like complete that. Absolutely. I think you can go back. I know you can go back and you can change that outcome. Like, because that's what, like, I know people who do that, and I do that a little bit, but it's not like my biggest calling. But there are people who literally lead you back into like those past lives and say, okay, this is, you see what happened, okay, now let's change it. Like, okay, you escape, you get to go live happily or whatever. And so yeah, exactly, that's going into like a parallel timeline and rewriting it for your soul.
To
I've done some of
complete
that
that
recently and
lifetime.
felt it
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. So do you
Yeah.
think then in this embodiment, we have all these like parallel realities coexisting for this lifetime as they're coexisting for past lifetimes as well, all at once?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. I
So
mean,
there's
because think
like
about it.
trillion, like, I don't know, we can't even count how many embodiments of ourself are existing right now.
Yeah, or who that could, or like that could exist. Like
Mhm.
if we put the frequency, that's why, like, we talk about like timelines. Um, like we talked about timelines a lot, and we recorded an episode from my podcast, which I think will probably be out before this one. So
I'll
we
include the link.
yeah. So like that's what the timelines are. It's like we can, if we put our energy into the frequency of like whatever parallel timeline we want to be on, that's like where we jump.
Mhm.
That's how I see it. So yeah, there's like trillions of possibilities. I mean, because there's always a possibility, for example, like if our soul is like, I don't know, I'm not doing this right, I need to come back. Like we could like, this is kind of morbid, but like we could like be like, our soul could be like, okay, it's time to like leave this body and like we could die in a car crash tomorrow. But then there's also like the timeline of like, okay, I'm doing what I need to do, and like on we go,
I love how you picked like the most morbid example of that. Like true, like no, it makes it understandable, but it's true.
It is morbid though.
You made it understandable to everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though, all the times we've channeled and regressed to past lives, I'm wondering if we even regress to past lives, like the actual timeline that we in this embodiment lived, like, or did we regress then to a timeline that had a different frequency just so we could kind of learn a lesson and bring it back with us?
Mm, that's an interesting question, or like an interesting point. I feel like when we're, maybe it's the intention to which we bring it, because if we're going back to a timeline, to a past life with the intention of healing it, I do think we're going back to like a place where we're in the same dimensional frequency, because that's how we move through it, right? Like we go back and move through it. But then also if we're just going back, like I'm sure you've probably experienced this, like it just, if I'm just, for example, just want to go back to a past life, or I just want to see like a bigger overview, then that could definitely be, I'm not looking at something like specific, then that could be a parallel timeline where I'm just like, show me the lesson in this. And maybe that is a parallel timeline. But then it also doesn't matter. Like if we're getting what we need, if we're getting the healing we need, does it matter? There's
I
like,
don't know, does it?
yeah,
Probably not, right?
probably not, because it's all us still. It's just different ways that it plays out.
Do you find that each time you've regressed or just channeled information about past lives, it was like there was a purpose to it, like there was relevance as to why that past life showed up in this current projected reality for you?
Yes. Yes. The only one that I can't find the purpose for still is the very first regression I ever did. I was 14 and I didn't fully understand what I was doing. And my mom was just like, come with me. Um, and the memory I saw, like I didn't get that much because I wasn't, super open to it yet. I was kind of at that point where I was closing everything off. But I do remember seeing myself as a girl, like probably about the same, I felt like it was about the same age, like 13 or 14, um, in the middle of a grassy field surrounded by trees, like a clearing in a forest. And that's all I saw. And I still don't, and I was dressed in like really beautiful, like leather boots and like a petticoat and dress. So like it was back in, it was probably like 200 years ago, but I don't know what the purpose of that was, but that's the only one I remember. And I'm like, I do not know what the purpose of that was.
Because I wonder if 13, 14-year-old you was kind of missing some sort of like sustenance in this lifetime that you needed to be reminded of from that past.
Yeah, probably, but I don't unless it was just saying like I needed to be outside more. But I don't know what I'm actually, that's interesting. I probably should go back and see if I can like re-access that memory and be like, why did I see this? Because I don't know.
So do we want to kind of discuss, I don't know, our recent past life regressions or even how we channel? I know you go into the 23rd dimension a lot, like how we do channel information about our past lives and what we do once we get that information and yeah, all that fun stuff.
Let's do it. Absolutely.
So I know with me, I'll honestly be like walking down the street or like taking a bath or doing something and just like a date comes up or some like weird animal that like is now extinct comes up. And I'm like, okay, there's no way. And like sometimes things come up where I'm like, my mind cannot imagine this. Like I give myself credit. I feel like I'm very intellectual, but like sometimes I'm like, no, like my imagination isn't that capable. So yeah, I feel like the first thing, it's like, how do you kind of derive that the messages you're receiving are legitimate and they are from previous lifetimes, although coexisting, as opposed to just like your imagination, I don't know,
I
running
think it's,
wild.
I think it's trust, because I think our imagination is even like we're imagining things that we have experienced at some point. Um, but I do think it's definitely trust. Like you just have to like, and that's why if I really want to do deep work, I like to go into a space where that's what I'm calling in is the things I need to see, because then it's easier to trust. But even now, like now that I understand it more, I even think back to like as a kid, I was just like, um, I just imagined things all the time. Did you ever read Anne of Green Gables?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah. And you know how she's always like imagining and off in her like own little world. I was obsessed with that. And I would do the exact same thing because I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so just even now in hindsight, I'm like, well, yeah, like the things I was imagining then and calling in, I'm sure those were things like I always used to imagine I was with like dwarfs, like, which is so interesting. And now that's
Like
one of the
Snow
things.
White.
Yeah. And now that's one of those things, one of the things that my shamanic teacher, she was like, when we first connected, she was like, yeah, the dwarves are saying they really need to talk to you. And I'm like, oh my God, I was probably connecting to
Wait,
them as a kid.
when was the last time you connected to them?
Probably like 8 or 9 years old. So
That's interesting because during my twin flame episode with Catherine, I was talking about like my grassy field and I was like, oh, there's little like gnomes here and leprechauns and just like all these like little small people. I'm like,
yeah,
wow, like I feel like, yeah, maybe that's what your grassy field was that you regressed
yeah,
to.
exactly. So I do think there's trust to it. And also just like imagination is super powerful. So if it's coming into your imagination, like there's a reason for it too.
Mm.
And so trusting that too.
So, how do you receive information personally about past lives? Is it just like a word comes up, or do you see an image and then you have to research and kind of connect the dots, or are you actually presented with like a full experience, a full scenario?
Yeah, so sometimes small things, it's like, you know, those deja vu moments. And then I'll like go and look it up further. And sometimes, you know, dates or things, or even if I really get interested in like a historical time period, then I allow myself to kind of go into that. And then what I usually do is go into my records, like when I'm ready to really go deep, and you know, go to the 23rd dimension and ask, okay, what is the past life here? And when I'm really in a deep space, I get a lot, like I'll get I'll get visions, I'll get words. I will always leave my phone like next to me on record so that I can just like speak out loud,
Speak.
um, whatever comes through. So yeah, like when I go really deep into it, it's like I do feel like I kind of leave my body and I'm like going back and living them again and getting like what I need to do. But in day-to-day life, it is more of just like a quick word or like a deja vu moment. Um,
When you regress, do you like, are you in first person, like you're actually reliving, or are you just like a third person watching everything play out?
I'm first person. Yeah, I'm pretty much always in the first person.
That's like
Sometimes,
me. I like feel everything. I smell everything. I see it from a first person perspective, but I hear people saying that they're just like revisiting as like a
just
third
watching.
person and watching.
Yeah, for myself, it's definitely a first person. Obviously, someone else, I'm like not. I'm in third person, but yeah, I think it's always been first person.
But then what I do too, which now I'm questioning, I'm the first person, but then I'll ask myself, like my past life self, which is also me because I'm first person,
Mhm.
questions. Like when I don't understand something, I'm like, why are we doing this? And then I just like answer to myself.
I do that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, well, because we're kind of like two consciousnesses, right? Even if we're, yeah. So I do that
Yeah,
too.
like
I'm always
one
like,
conscious will be
why?
like, yeah, why are we doing this? Or can you explain this? Yeah.
I don't understand.
Okay, so I'm not the only one.
No, definitely not.
Okay, so why don't we talk about first your most recent past life regression? That was the one you did after our first conversation, right? Or have you had another one since?
Just the one after our first conversation.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's discuss that. And then maybe we could discuss past lives where maybe we weren't human or other
Yeah.
incarnations and what we could get incarnated to. So, yeah, let's start with your past life regression.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, it was really long. It was almost 4 hours, so I won't like go through everything. It was so
Whoa.
long. Um, some of it was pretty like dark too. So I don't know if you want me to go into like the dark stuff.
As much as you
Um,
feel comfortable sharing.
okay, well, I don't want to go into this super deeply because it is like it is kind of gruesome. But the first life that came back that I went back to was in 1987, and I was 13 years old, and I basically saw myself like being tortured to death. Um, and I like so I told my boyfriend about it afterwards,
Mm.
and I started laughing, and he's like, "Why are you laughing? This is awful." And I was like, "Because it's so awful. If I don't laugh, like, what am I going to do? Cry?" It's like unbelievable. Um, but the reason I'm mentioning it is because it did bring up this like at the end. I saw my like I felt like my eyes like being like removed, and yeah, it was really, really, really
So,
gruesome.
when you were regressing, you actually felt yourself being tortured.
I like felt like the shadow of it, like not as intense as, but like the shadow of like, oh yeah, this is happening. Oh, that's not fun. And but it like brought back to me. I understood why I saw it because it was my whole regression had like two themes, like eyes, like seeing, and digesting, like because I was like I want to like see what connects to my body. And it was all about like the reason I saw it was about my eyesight. But also the other interesting thing is that I got like very clearly it was in 1987. And when I shared it with my sisters after, one of them, Mariana, she was like, that's the year I was born. And when I went back and did a regression myself, I was like, I got that it was really important that I was born at that time for some reason. And like, isn't that wild? Um, Oh, chills. So like, yeah, like
Wait, I want to jump in. How did you get reincarnated so quickly? Because isn't that like, weren't you born less than 10 years after that?
yeah, I was born in 95, so
Your soul is just like, we're
my
not,
soul was
yeah.
like I honestly think this time the reason I came back so quickly is because of like, what's happening in the world. Um but yeah, no, that is a really quick jump because usually I feel like souls we sit in the astral for like a couple decades at least.
That
um
interconnection, though, is just so, so interesting.
Yeah, like she said she felt like she was born with a real like her soul had a real sense of urgency to come back.
Does she
Um,
have any connection to like eyes
um
or just like seeing or
no, not
perceiving?
particularly, but there was another life that I'll tell you about in a minute where she and I both saw the same life. Um and it was really interconnected, so I'll tell you in a second. Because it's really cool. And then this one I really love. So I went back to Atlantis. That's which we were talking about. So I want to tell you. And I got that I was in Atlantis. I lived for 444 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay, but it was something about the technology of what was going on. It was like the golden age, kind of the end of the golden age of Atlantis. And I saw this in a couple of lights. Like I could project
So,
my
how old were
consciousness.
you when you regressed back? Did you regress to like you were 400 years old, or did you kind of live out that lifetime?
I regress to. I don't have an age. So it says that I said when I first connected to that, like in my notes from it, it says I said when I first connected to that body, I was 5. in human years, but I was 100 years in my consciousness. So maybe the 440 years is like my consciousness is that age. But by the end of the time, at the end of the life, I definitely was older, because basically what happened was I saw, like, I had this eye thing going on as well. I like had like these like weird glasses I would wear, so I could like see everything, like see energy. Like it was so interesting, to see other people, to see their thoughts, like if they, yeah, I think it was kind of like through colors, like I could see if like they were dangerous or not. And I was there with a bunch of people, with like my sisters and brothers, and then like lots of other people. Like I've connected to a lot of souls. I wouldn't be surprised if you were connected to this as either, like who were in that same kind of like all this huge group of us. And we were, there are huge crystals that we could use to move the energy around. And basically what happened in that life was we were trying to change the energy of the earth, because it was like, what I said was the leaders of Atlantis were getting corrupted, and they wanted to take over the power. And, Atlantis, like the reason it imploded was because we were using the energy of the crystals improperly. And so we were we were taking that power back from the crystals, and we were trying to send out like this huge, like a light code activation. And so we did do that. But the like leaders realized what we were up to, and they used their own like technology to stop it.
What is this common theme with just corrupt leaders in all of our incarnations?
I know. And yeah, so they like use their power to stop it, and everything imploded. And
so you were there and alive for the fall of Atlantis.
that wasn't even the full fall though. That was like the start of the fall. And then I saw that I came back after that. Okay, wait. So it says that I said that it exploded when we sent out this energy. It killed like my senses, because I had this sense where I could literally project my consciousness into like any animal. So I could like be sitting in this chair, and I could like be in an animal like 100 miles away. And within
like
44
Game
days,
of Thrones.
yeah, seriously. And within 44 days, I was dead. And then I came back later, because Atlantis, that wasn't the fall. I came back later for the fall, and I've seen that I remember that for a long time, like everything breaking.
I feel like everyone who has had a lifetime there was there for the fall. I feel like that's what we all remember.
I think so too. I think that's why it's like such a thing in our mythology, is because everyone who is there remembers it. Because I definitely remember that. Oh,
So during this regression that you had, you saw multiple lifetimes? Because I only saw one. Like mine was only an hour, so I only saw one.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, should people go into regression thinking they're going to see multiple, or should they just kind of feel what comes up? Like if they're fine only seeing one and getting the meaning from one, that's enough. Because like all I needed was that one.
Yeah, I think it's what you needed. I think it's what you need. Like I needed to see all of this stuff. I'll tell you like the brief overview of the other ones, so you can see like there's like a definite theme of why I needed to see everything I saw. But then also like sometimes it is just one that comes up. Like I've had that happen too, where I just see one because that's what I need. So I think it is definitely what we need.
And okay, I want to know what you set your intention for before the regression that you needed meaning for in this life.
Yeah,
Like, why this overarching theme?
I wanted to understand my like soul powers and abilities, and why I'm here in this lifetime. I wanted to see like what I'd done in past lifetimes more deeply. And then also, this is one of the really interesting ones, is I was at the time I had this regression, I was working through this past life that's come up in my consciousness for like 5 years. And I wanted to know the reason for that. I wanted to know the fullness of what happened. And that's the next one I saw. So this past life is one that I saw when I was really sick with Lyme disease. It came up as like being one of the big reasons I was sick. And basically I saw myself as a pregnant woman, and I died, and I lost the baby. And that's all I saw when I first saw it. And I was in like Egypt. And so it was coming up a lot again before I did this regression, that in the regression, I saw the full life, which was essentially ancient Egypt. I was a priestess with Isis. This is where my sisters were there again as well. And one of them remembers the same lifetime. And basically what happened was I was like with somebody, like in a relationship, and this person has been in my life this life as well. And like I've done a lot of that's it. I was with this person 5 years ago when this memory first came up, and he was like, in that life, he was not a very good person. He was, he was working against what we were doing, and he was scared of me, but he was like, it was okay to be together, essentially, as long as he could let me go whenever he needed to. And then I got pregnant, and he took me, the soul took me to like a bunch of different places to try and like, give me poisons, give me all this stuff to try and like get rid of the baby, abort the baby. And it didn't work. And so he took me into the desert in this lifetime and stabbed me and killed me. And so that's what
I don't want to make any correlations, but the fact that he was in your life when you were the sickest in this lifetime, and then he also killed you in your past, like,
oh,
I
it's
don't
not
know.
a coincidence.
No.
No, it's
I'll
not.
let everyone else come to their own conclusions about him, but
and in this life, he's like not he's not a bad person. Like he wasn't a great person for me at that time, but like because I've gone through so much healing, like it's no longer an issue. I can have love in my heart for the person now. But it's crazy because my one of my sisters had a regression like a week before I did, and she saw the same life, and what she came out of it saying was, our youngest sister, because I was the youngest one in that lifetime, our youngest sister was killed and we didn't stop it. We should have stopped. We should have saved her. And so that was a huge thing, because once I fully saw that life, it cleared a lot of like physical issues for me in my body as well. But then I kind of went through and I saw some other like, just like, I saw myself in the mountains where I like relax. And then I saw myself as a shaman medicine man in the Hopi tribe in North America, where I channeled the rainbow prophecy, and where I taught the people about how to work with the buffalo, and how to be friends with them, the sacredness of them, which is really wild, because afterwards I learned about like the how important the buffalo is in Native American cultures, like indigenous cultures. So I saw that. And then this is what the one that, like, when you told me some of your stuff, and I want to hear what you saw too. I'm almost done. But this is what I thought was really interesting, because then I went to Ireland, or to like, it felt like Ireland, but it could have been anywhere in like the kind of Celtic world. And I was in a clearing, and there's a big pond, and there are druids. I said there are druids, fairies, leprechauns, women in white, sprites, nymphs, everything. And we were around a big pool on a full moon, working with energy and doing ceremonies. And I described this exact place in Ireland that I've never been to before, where there is a pond. And I said, I need to go back and open this portal on Halloween. Well, I'm not going to be there physically, but like energetically, I need to go open a portal of energy there. But when you said that you told me that you go to like a place with a pond and lots of different creatures around, I was like, oh my God, this is so wild. But there was that. And then, yeah, there were a couple other things but they weren't as important, but that was all like this big theme of like, these are the really important things in my past lives, like on earth, that I need to know.
I do want to go back to kind of the ethics of it, because this was brought up during my regression by the person is that a word? Regressing me?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, the ethics of us going back, because like clearly your stories, they show how interconnected your projected reality is right now to a lot of like traumas that you experienced in your past.
Yeah.
So at what point should we kind of not disregard our traumas in this lifetime and like heal completely in this lifetime, but when is it right for us then to go to past life traumas to heal those when we have pain and trauma in this lifetime?
Yeah, I think it is definitely a kind of a slippery slope. I do think to really do this, I've been thinking about this because you asked me this before we started recording. And I do think to really get deep into the past life stuff, it requires that a certain amount of our current life trauma has already been worked through. like most people are not even like be interested in their past life stuff, I don't think, until they've gotten to a point where they can like see through the clouds of their current life trauma. But then like when you're at that point, I do think that the past life work helps us work through this current life trauma. Like it, like for myself, like what I just shared, I can literally see such huge correlations between the trauma I hold in this life. And the last little thing I'll share is that about like what I saw is going back to that one life with the where I died, and I like was with that the same soul in this life, and um, and had to work through that karma in this life. First, I'd already worked through a lot of karma with that soul before I fully saw what happened in the past life. Second, another thing that came out of that life was my regressionist. Like at the end, she was like, I still feel energy around that life. Is there anyone else in your life that comes to mind? Like obviously this one person was a big part of it, but like this soul feels like it fragmented it into several places in your life for you to really learn this. And I actually received that energy had been fragmented into my one of my brothers and my father as well. So that helped me, like, because both of them I've had like in the past, we had a lot of like trauma to work through, and it kind of helped me work through the end of that. Like it informed that the healing I'd already done to be able to fully like close that trauma chapter. I don't know, like to close that in this life. So I do think I think we need to be careful to make sure that we're like not bypassing what's happened in our current life, but using it to inform our healing.
Oh my God, so well said. So, yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like we're on this constant journey in this lifetime and in our past lives that are coexisting, that there is deeper essence and meaning to channeling and journeying back into these past lives. And I know I understand where the ethics standpoint stems from, just because, yeah, if we do have loads of trauma and pain in this lifetime, I feel like some people, and I know me personally, I sometimes use spirituality as like an escape mechanism
Yeah,
where I just want to be like my soul essence all the time and be like existing in higher dimensions, that I completely disregard my human form and all the beauty that's around me, like just living in the present too. So I
absolutely.
understand where that standpoint comes from. I understand the ethics where it's like you have such like a beautiful projected reality. Why are you constantly trying to like connect to past life versions of yourselves or like higher dimensional versions of yourself, when obviously there's a reason why we've been incarnated in this form in
Mm-hmm.
this lifetime at this time. But yeah, I feel like there's obviously a reason why we want to get past life regressions, why we want to journey back to certain times. And I think honestly, each time we journey back to a certain era, a certain lifetime, there's reason to it. Like there's meaning
Yeah,
to it. And there is relevance to our current reality as to why we're journeying to that specific life.
I agree. I agree. I also think, where the ethics thing can go too far is like if someone is being guided to a past life regression, regardless of how much trauma they have in this current life that they have or have not worked through, they obviously like they're being guided to do it. So then who are we to say, like, you can't do it right now? You need to work through your current life stuff. Like, what if this is a thing that helps them unlock the thing that's missing in their current life that hasn't allowed them to fully work through everything?
Yeah, I completely agree. Do you think each time we regress, though, there is a deeper meaning to that? Or could we sometimes regress and it's just like for us to just experience that lifetime, just to know another part of our identity?
I think it can be both. I do think it can be both. Like, um, I do think it's all about the intention we go into it with. Like, I could definitely see how it could be fun to like do a regression someday where like I just want to see like whatever is fun. I just want to see like whatever I want to see, without necessarily needing the healing to go into it. Probably not as common. Like I do think just seeing past lives is healing in itself because it does, like, our past lives inform so much obviously, but yeah, I do think it can be both. It's all about intention.
Mhm. So I don't want to discuss mine in its entirety because I did record it during my
Okay.
past life regression. So I do want to have probably like a separate solo episode on that. But I do there's definitely relevance and there's a lot of connections between the lifetimes you shared and what I experienced, which like the crystals, for
Cool.
example, in Atlantis, or being back in like a forest with a pond, little little connections here and there. So I do
Yeah.
want to share some symbolism maybe through my regression. And then I guess 2 weeks after this one's posted, I'll post my actual regression recording.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so basically, I kind of went in with an intention because I'm so like analytical and like philosophical and all that. So, like, I wrote down all these intentions being like, I want to see which dimension my higher self is existing in. I want to see my first incarnation where I was this beautiful light body. Like, I want to go back to Egypt. Like, I was just picking all these amazing incarnations that I wanted to see.
Mhm.
Just I don't even know why I set that intention. I just kind of wanted, because I've been given like hints into all of these. So I'm like, okay, explain more. Like, what relevance does that have? But then that kind of shift after talking to the
Expressionist.
regressionist. Oh my God, I'm like making up words. It's Mercury retrograde. Like, my communication is just all up in the air.
Fall off. Yeah.
So like I do have like my notebook here, and I'll just kind of like read off what my intentions going into it were. So, yeah, I really want to see my Egyptian lifetime. I was taking a bath during like one of the new moons recently, and I got a date, which was 46 BC. And when I searched
Ooh.
it up, this is super interesting because me and you were having private conversations about the Library of Alexandria and how that burnt down and how I feel I was around during that time. So
Yeah.
46 BC, first of all, I'm horrible with history. I don't know dates at all. So there's no way I could have remembered this for like history class. But basically, that was the year before Julius Caesar came in power. Yes.
Wow.
I want to know about this lifetime because, like, what do I have any connection to the whole Caesar, Cleopatra reign? Or, like, was I
Yeah.
around when the actual library got accidentally, apparently, burnt down? Like, what relevance does that have to me? It didn't come up, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm sure it'll come up with time. But yeah, so then I wanted to see, I know I've had root race incarnation. So like root race, I
Okay.
consider like Atlantis a root race, like
Yeah.
Lemuria race. I feel really connected to Polarians. And they apparently, for people who don't know, they were apparently the first root race on Earth.
I didn't actually know about them.
Yes.
Okay, wait, I have to look it up.
Yeah,
Cool.
they're Polarians, and then after them was Hyperboreans, and then like Lemurians, Atlanteans. Yeah.
Very cool.
Obviously, these are all the most profound incarnations, and I've had messages and connections to them, but none of them came up. So basically, before my session, I kind of what came up was like, I feel a little disconnected in this projected reality right now. And I feel like literally everyone has been feeling disconnected. It's just like
Yeah.
the times, like it's kind of like a collective energy right now. But I was like, I just want to go back to a time where I felt so whole in my human body. I feel like I'm really like crown activated right now. And I'm just kind of like floating around that I've completely disregarded my human form, literally to the point where like, I feel like I'm like malnourished. I haven't been like feeding myself nutritious foods. I haven't been like taking care of myself, even just more superficial surface level things that we consider like painting your nails or like doing your hair or like putting on makeup, stuff like that. I've just completely just been disregarding. Like when I look at myself, I'm like, oh, beautiful light being. And I forget that this
Need
light
his
being
body.
chose to be human.
Yeah.
So that was definitely like I actually got really emotional about that before the regression even happened. I don't feel a connection to my human form. Like I wish one day I'd wake up in my light body and just be like floating around. And she's like,
Mhm.
no, like obviously so many light beings are incarnated here on earth for a reason. Right now, yeah, you could still be this light being, but you're in a human form. So kind of find that balance. So that was the intention then going into the session, where to revert back to lifetime where I felt that spiritual soul essence balance with like my human bodily
Human
self.
self. Yeah.
Yes. So okay, so ideally, like I was trying to like imagine, like use my imagination and be like, okay, was I ever like a goddess, a queen or a ruler, whatever? But what came
Yeah.
up was very Celtic vibe. So I was a little girl, like 9 or 10. I I feel like I kind of looked similar to how I look now, except like my hair was like long and brown ashy instead of brown chocolate. I don't know. And I was alone in this little village. And to one side of the village, and right away the vibe was very like peasant village,
Okay.
And okay, so interesting. The first thing I looked down at was like the shoes I was wearing and the outfit I was wearing, and it was buffalo skin. So the fact that
Wow.
that you mentioned buffalo, because at first I was like bison, like boar, like what animal is this? And I got like when I asked my conscious asked my other conscious, it was like buffalo skin. I was like, all right, I don't know where I got that from, but I'm wearing buffalo skin.
Okay.
But I'm in this peasant village, and to one side is like a forest, and the other side, there's this bridge. And this is kind of like symbolism too, where on the other side of the bridge, so we're on the poor side, and the other side of the bridge is where all like the noblemen live, and like there was a king there apparently, and all that. But I was alone. And basically, everyone else from my little town, my little village was. I first I thought it was like a festival happening. Later, I found out and I checked the dates and they match up that the king's son was sick and there was like a monetary reward for whoever could help him. And basically,
Wow.
the date of the regression, this is crazy. I was like 1300s, and the Black Death, like the bubonic plague, was
Yeah.
happening in Europe during that time.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Oh
so,
my
like, yeah,
goodness.
lots of symbolism. And then there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot I still need to research. But basically, I wanted to steal food for like animals that were in the forest. And there was this horse in the forest that I went to go feed. And we were by a pond, and I'm just like drinking water of the pond. And like the horse is drinking water. And like the whole time, I'm like, my parents don't let me come in the forest. Like, there's a beast here. And basically, the beast was like a werewolf. And the whole time, I'm like, I'm not scared. Like, he's just misunderstood. So just a lot of like weird creatures come up, and like I'll search them up. Basically, Europe 1300s too, there was this huge werewolf craze where and I'm horrible with dates. I don't know what the hell was happening during the 1300s, but
Yeah.
it all just checked out when I was Googling it after. So then, okay, this is where super interesting. So the horse brings me to a cave, and right away I'm like, interpretations of caves right now. I'm like, I'm gonna see some like lower vibrational like star beam come up. This is good. This is gonna get dark. But there was this beautiful crystal. It was a really small cave, a beautiful crystal just radiating such light and luminance at the end of the cave. And I
Wow.
go and I'm like touching it. I'm like, it won't move. Like this belongs to someone, but like I feel its energy radiating. Like there's something special about this cave. And then later, I'm like, the townspeople, they're trying to destroy this whole forest area. And there's so much energy here. And so the person who, or the being whose cave that belonged to came, and it was never in my life have I seen something like this, but it was like a frog humanoid. 7 or 8 what? You're giving me a look.
Oh,
Have
no,
you
I'm just
seen a
like,
frog humanoid?
no, I haven't. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm trying to imagine that. That's wild.
Yeah, super nice too. Basically, it gives me some sort of like soup or drink or tea or whatever it was. And it was just like, you have to drink this. So I somehow make my way back to the town because I'm like, oh God, like my parents are going to come back. I wasn't allowed to be in the forest. And all like the insight I got was just this would save the king's son and I would get money and help out my family and all that. So I'm on the bridge crossing over. And this is kind of a dilemma I deal with in this lifetime where I'm like, do I help others or should I care for myself first? Because right away, I know when you care for yourself, obviously, that kind of you raise
Yeah.
your vibrations, you're able to care for others better and more thoroughly. But for some reason, I was like, again, dealing with the dilemma I deal with like in this lifetime where I'm like, do I cross the bridge and go give like the super tea that was made for me to like the king's son? Or do I take it like it was meant to be for me? Like, am I supposed to drink it? So I'm like
Yeah.
standing on the bridge forever and I'm like trying to decide. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to drink it. It was mine. Like, there's obviously a reason I'm supposed to have it. And basically, long story short, I drink this tea or soup or whatever it was, and I feel every single I swear the frog gave me like ayahuasca or something. I feel every single bone in my body, every single limb. My senses are so heightened, but it was such a feeling of pure bliss. I just felt so reconnected to my physical form. And as I was just like lying there in hypnosis, like my body literally was so whole. Like I felt limbs in like my toes. Like I just felt every part of me, like every organ, every bone, every limb just existing and coexisting. And that's a feeling I feel like I brought back with me since that regression. But also, like, it was just so interesting how I was this young girl and I was able to, like, interact with like mythical creatures. Like obviously I was using telepathy to communicate with them. Like we wouldn't be speaking the same language as some frog.
Right.
But at the same time, I was so full and so whole and so like sure of my human form. And that was something I know now that I was supposed to be reminded of in this life.
That is so beautiful. Oh, wow. Also, this just came to me, the frog thing. I wonder if what he gave you was, I don't remember what it's called, but there's like a ceremonial way of using, I think it's venom from a venomous frog or poison from, I don't know,
Okay, because
poison from a poisonous frog
I've
in the
seen like
Amazon.
yeah, I've seen like movies and stuff where like people lick a toad and then they start hallucinating.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's what you got was, whatever that is. Oh, I can't remember the name of it now, but you know, the toad
Mhm.
that has poison or whatever that gives hallucinations. What a cool regression. Wow.
It was
That's
yeah,
so in depth.
I didn't anticipate it. My intentions obviously were super different, but it was what I needed.
And I just want to say this is really interesting too, because um, I'm just listening to you and thinking, I was listening to you and thinking we received so differently too, because you received like dates and things that you could check up on and like draw that correlation. I did not at all. I was just like, all right, I just
Mhm.
gonna trust this. Like I knew where I was, but I didn't get like anything I could like look up and be like, did this really happen? You know? And so I just think that's a kind of a cool parallel to draw, that like everyone receives it differently. And like,
And like
yeah,
trust what you're receiving too.
yeah.
Like at
All
first
about
I'm
trust.
like, yeah, like a werewolf, like some frog humanoid, like it seems so strange, but I was like,
Yeah.
no, there's relevance. And when I started like making those correlations through just like Google search, I was like, holy shit, like apparently there are accounts of like weird frog humanoid beings.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool. Did
yeah.
not know that. Wow.
Or like, yeah, werewolves during the 1300s. Apparently that
Yeah,
was like a big thing. So
that was a thing.
100%
Wow.
trust. And if it didn't actually exist that way, there's probably some sort of symbolism as to why that's appearing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also like, um, you know, not the same as a history book, but like for example, my life when I'm in Egypt that I talked about, um, working like as a priestess with Isis and like the goddesses. There are like I have read books where people write about very similar things, like the lineage of the codes of light. I don't know if you've read that book, but they like there are things in that book where I'm like, oh yeah, like
It's in
I've
my
seen like,
Amazon cart.
oh, you got to get it. It is so good. Um, or even like the Sophia Code. Have you read that one? Oh, you should get that one too. It's so good. Like when I read that one, there's a part of it about the great white buffalo calf woman, and I was like, oh, wow, this is super connected to what I was like, part of things I've seen in regressions and stuff as
And
well.
so
So
connected to the journey you're about to embark on with
yeah,
shamanism too.
exactly. So basically there's just like lots of different ways to verify things we get. Like some it might be you can Google, or maybe it's like you'll like read a book after and be like, oh wow, okay, people are talking about like
Mhm.
similar things. So yeah.
Okay. So I do want to discuss kind of how we get, not how we get reincarnated, or more like who we get reincarnated to.
Yeah.
So basically, are there any restrictions as to what our soul could be incarnated into? Because it's
I
kind of, I don't know, it's hard to accept that like maybe I'm going to get reincarnated as to like an ascended master, like Buddha or
yeah.
like Jesus, or even like an angel or archangel. Like it seems like there are restrictions, but at the same time, I hear people saying that they're like, I don't know, these ascended masters as well, or they're from like the angelic realm. So yeah. Do you know if there's restrictions or could we literally get incarnated into everything?
Yeah, well, so first off, I actually have received and like seen there are a lot of us who are actually ascended masters right now. We just don't like necessarily all of us remember that we are. So like a lot of the
Exposed. Like,
yeah, no, exactly. Like it's something that we like remember is like we remember when it's time to remember. But that was a big thing I channeled about a month ago, was like pretty much everyone who's in this space is either like an initiator or a priestess or a priest of an ascended master, or literally is an ascended master. And I'm really curious about you because I really feel like you are like an ascended master of some kind. I don't know. I'm just looking at you and I'm like, yeah, I feel like you are. like myself, Maya, like who I talk about as being like one of my big, like my who my soul is. She's like an ascended master, and she's also like a triple goddess. So like I so I know that, and it seems like really crazy to say. So I'm like, I don't
That's
want
a
to sound
nice
like,
title to have.
but I
Shannon
don't.
Maya, Ascended Master, like triple goddess.
I know I should like make that like my like name tag, but like a lot of people are different like goddesses or gods or ascended masters right now. So I don't think there's a restriction in that sense. Obviously, not every single person is, but like every single person has a connection to one of them in some way. It's just like, like everyone knows if it's something that like you figure out if you'll feel into it, like what are you embodying. But then I don't believe that there's a restriction, like we can come back as animals. I think we can come back. um I've seen other people say that like they've come back as like rocks, like they remember being like a rock or a tree, which is crazy. um so I do think we can come back as anything. And like I'm going to give it's a really quick example of like one of my cats. She is super divine. And the other about a week ago I was connecting to her, and I was connecting to my records actually, and she just kind of like butted in, and she was like, hey, I'm here. And she was like, yeah, I'm part of the energy I carry is the goddess Kali. And I was like, what?
You like
I was like,
in
you?
my house?
Like obviously not like the full essence of her, but like like there's a part of her that carries a little bit of that energy. And so like, yeah, like I think we can come back as anything. And we are so many people right now in 2020 in this time, because we're going through this huge ascension, are literally ascended masters. Like I channeled about a month ago that there is someone on earth who is literally Buddha again right now. Like I don't know who it is, but there's someone who is like, who's that. There are lots of people who hold Jesus energy. I don't think there's just one person from my channelings. There's like lots of people, lots of people who hold Mary Magdalene, lots of people who hold all of these
I
different
love
things.
her.
Yeah. I see her like I can see her energy in you. That's what it is. I was like, who is it I'm seeing? But I could definitely see her energy in you.
I wanted to actually have her on like my podcast list. I really want to do on like her day. I want to do a podcast about her.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So magical. Yeah. They talk about her. She's in the lineage. Well, she's in the Sophia Code and Lineage of the Codes of Light. So you'll have to read both because
I hope people aren't scared, like, like Book of Revelations. Like, basically, we're told, because I grew up Catholic, like, when Jesus returns, yeah, like, that's the end of the world.
yeah,
So I think, yeah, that's really interesting, too, that we could still have the essence of Ascended Masters. We don't necessarily need to be a full embodiment of them, but they are, like, they're 100% roaming our earth right now.
absolutely. And we are like, in a non-scary way, we are at the end of the world, right? We're at the end of this iteration of the world. Like that's what the new paradigm that we're moving towards is all about, is literally the new world. So I think, I mean, I grew up Catholic too. I don't really relate to it anymore, but I do. I mean, I never did as a kid. I was like, this is also
Me
doom and
neither. That's why,
gloom.
like, I loved Mary Magdalene. I was like, yeah, girl, like, you're the only
She's
diverse
amazing.
character in the New Testament.
Yeah, and she's been so slandered as her name, but like
Mhm.
when you read channelings from her, she says, she's like, I knew this was going to happen, and I don't even care, because there are those of you now who are remembering me and who are holding parts of me and like bringing me back into, who I really was. But what was most important was that I was there to like help the world, like help the new world at that time. And now, and she's like, we even knew at that time, they said this, she says this in her like part of the lineage of Codes of Light. She's like, we knew at that time that all of the teachings of Jesus and myself, because it was both of them really, would be completely changed,
Distorted, yeah.
distorted to fit into what we see, what we now call like modern Christianity. She's like, oh, we knew that would be so distorted and made really patriarchal to like, that women were going to be oppressed and all this stuff. But we knew that, then there would be people who would come back when the world was about to change and bring it back to what it is. And I just love that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because it's like the
Yeah.
fact that she's like a new age feminist existing. I don't know my dates. When was Jesus was born? Zero, right?
Yeah.
Apparently. Yeah. So,
He
like,
was
what?
born
Like,
like a few years after.
yeah. So, existing during like 20, 30, 40 AD. Like, the fact that her energy and essence is so relevant right now with even like feminist movements happening in 2020, crazy.
It's really cool. It's like you never know your impact like can keep on, and you can keep on impacting the world thousands of years after you were born, essentially.
Okay, so what have you then been incarnated into? Like, what lifetimes have you seen? Have you always been human? Obviously not.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I actually think I've only really been human at really pivotal times on Earth. I've seen like a couple like not very important human lives where I was just like here to be human. But well, for example, one of the lives I saw in my regression that was I didn't mention because it was really quick was I saw myself as like, you know, the story of Joan of Arc, and she had like angels come to her. I remember that I was like an angel that came to her. I was like one of the people who came.
You knew
Yeah.
Joan of Arc?
I was like the angel who came and I was like, go do this. Like, so I've seen myself as that. I've seen myself, you know, on Earth in earthly mythologies, like, you know, as goddesses coming back and such. In Greece, you know, in the Greek myths, I remember like a lot of that being those myths being truth. But then also, you know, off of Earth, always coming back to the council, always coming back to being with the council, being part of the council in the 23rd dimension. They call with one of the first things they said to me was that you're an intergalactic traveler, and I was like, that's a cool title. So like I remember being in the Pleiades, for example, Sirius. I've visited places I know I've lived before. I don't even know where they are, just like different parts of the universe. Um,
And I know we talked about this privately, but do you think you've always stayed in this universe? Or have you been on an Earth in a different universe?
I would guess, I think I've been in other universes for sure, to learn. Basically, what I understand my mission to be is to like bring to Earth like the great to like shepherd Earth through it, like the great ascensions that we go through. And so I think, you know, I haven't fully sat down and like remembered these in visions, but I do feel the resonance of like I've definitely lived in other galaxies to learn from other places, to bring it to Earth, and to bring it to and also to bring it to like the council, because to sit on the council that like is where everything comes together. I know I've basically lived everywhere you could live or like visited at least. That's something
Is
I really
there
want
only
to.
one council or are there multiple per
There's multiple.
universes?
Oh, I don't know if they're I don't know. I feel like the councils all come together dimensionally. Like all the universes are the same when we get into the highest dimensions. There's definitely not just this one council. It's just the one council I sit on, but like there are lots of councils. You know, like people who know like the Galactic Federation of Light. There's like the Council of the Syrians. There's councils of Pleiadians. Like it's all. This is just like the particular one that I connect to. Yeah, like what we it's like. You know, we talk about the rainbow realm. And what we've channeled, like Mary and I, like in our podcast, so that we've talked about is like the rainbow realm is kind of the place, like the point where everything comes together. So it's like it's not that it's like the place where everything's in charge, like the council that's the top council or anything like that. It's just like the council that like brings things. It's like the unity council. And then there's all these other councils that do other things. So because of that, I do definitely get glimpses of being in other place, like being in pretty much everywhere we could have been, as souls. But that's something I don't remember as much about, like in vision. So something I really want to go more into. What about you?
Okay, on Earth, I feel like I've only ever been a star being coming back to like ancient civilizations and kind of ingraining their culture with like very advanced technologies. Like
Yeah,
I definitely had a lifetime in like Mayan civilizations when I
mm-hmm.
was at yeah, like literally when I was there, I was in Tulum this year. I'm gonna send you photos. There's photos that my friend took on my iPhone with like a rainbow just like around me, like a rainbow orb around me.
Oh my God, you have to send me that.
I
Yeah.
have to, yeah, I have to send them to you. So definitely I know I've incarnated in those ancient civilizations as star beings, but then I've only ever seen human lifetimes on Earth too. Like I've never seen myself as like a plant or a tree or an
Mm-hmm.
animal yet. or even like as an elemental, like I love fairies and I feel like I do have like a fairy essence, but I don't know if they're just like my guides or if
Yeah.
I've actually been a fairy.
Yeah, I think you have been a fairy. I can like see it in you. That I forgot that. I do remember being fairies too, and like you, like the energy. I can just kind of see. I think you definitely have been a fairy.
Because like I have them as
Like,
spirit guides, like I connect with them all the time, but I'm like,
yeah,
like, do you just want to be around me, or like, was I one of you once? Like, are you from a previous lifetime?
yeah. I think it's like you're. I think like a definitely past life, even multidimensional lives. Like you
Mhm.
are a fairy in other forms. Because I think a lot of I think star beings are fairies. That's what I receive is like the fairies are the purest form of star beings on who are like actually live on Earth.
I
So
could
like
see that. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
So I think
so
that's
like
all for Earth incarnations for me.
okay.
I don't want to get like all conceited and cocky, but I have connections to a lot of like rulers, especially during that BC to AD era. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, I was this ruler
Oh
because
no,
like
you totally can. I mean like for example, I'd love to hear what you feel connected to, but like I know I was Mary Queen of Scots. Like I like feel so, and I think there are probably other people who like hold that too. But
that's the
like
thing, because I hear people being like, oh, I'm like reincarnation of like Cleopatra. So I'm like, maybe there's a whole bunch of people that are like reincarnations of her carrying
yeah.
her essence. But I
I
know I
think
want
for
to
the
dive.
big leaders, there definitely are. Sorry, I do
Mhm.
think of the big leaders, especially back in like a few 100,000 years or 1,000 years ago. Like those are like multiple people.
Mhm.
Not everyone is, but there are some I do think are definitely those souls were like fragments of different souls.
Because their essence and their energy and frequency was just so elevated that I feel like it may be too powerful to be in this 3 dimension, right? Even though we are
Yeah,
elevating collectively, I feel like, yeah, it would still be too powerful to kind of exist just in one embodiment. So it
yeah,
kind of had to be like spread out a bit.
I agree, definitely.
So yeah, I think that's it for me human wise. And then star being, I don't think I'm even from this galaxy.
Yeah,
I think I am from something where so much further. And I did put that intention to see that lifetime, but it's just like it's not ready to be shown. But I do research a lot. Like I think 4 or 5 years ago, I first researched the like Galactic Federation of Light.
uh-huh,
And like I have like so many bookmarks on my computer saved of it. So like, I feel like I do have some sort of connection to that with like one of my star lifetimes.
interesting.
I don't know which one
Yeah,
it is. And as for star beings, I've been all of them, good, bad, like all. But I do want to say, even when I was like the lower density star beings, it was always to help progress human civilization. So even though now in 2020 they are perceived as negative, and like there's good and bad, like it's just polarity. There's good and bad in like every single being.
yeah,
But yeah, it was always to help progress human civilization. And I feel like I still do that now. Like I feel like that's just been my purpose throughout all the lifetimes.
yeah, definitely. Same here, which is why we've connected in this lifetime
Mhm.
again, of course, because like we all have to work together to do that. So I love
And
that.
just like don't be hard on yourself if you go into regression and you see yourself like killing someone or, doing something bad. It's like literally we're not special. We've all been killed, we've all killed. Like
Absolutely.
that's why. So don't be hard on yourself if like a lower density embodiment appears, because it's like, let's close like exactly what we talked about at the beginning of this. Let's close that lifetime, close that chapter, just put it in your picture book, like put it in your scrapbook,
Mhm.
and then that's it. You don't need to really resonate with it. You don't need to carry, even if you were what we consider bad person or bad entity. It's like you don't really need to carry that into this lifetime. It existed, it's
Absolutely.
done with, close it, and then that's it.
Absolutely. I agree. And I also like um Catherine, who was to talk to you about the twin flames, just for everyone listening. She said once to me, and I really loved this, that we've all had at least one life where we've been like a quote unquote bad person, like killed people or done something really awful, because that's how our soul learns. So, you know, I don't think no soul is fundamentally bad. It's just there's some some lives where we've done, less than good things, and that's just what we were learning at that time. So yeah, I just want to totally agree with you. Don't be hard on yourself. It is what it is. Don't do it in this life. Like you're seeing it to remember, so you know like where you've been, and now look at where you are.
And there's so much good that could come out of like reliving and re-experiencing those lifetimes too. Like my last lifetime, I was a colonial, like it was colonialism, and I invaded lands and took lands that weren't mine and did a lot of the killing. And basically the karma that I carried from that lifetime, and I feel like I've cleared that, I've healed from that. But the karma that I've carried into this lifetime allows me to like save law. I don't want to proclaim and like I'm Buddha or Jesus saving, like performing miracles, saving lives. But like my intention really, like my purpose really is to help save lives now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the fact that like in my last lifetime, I took away lives and like that karma has transferred into like my sole purpose in this lifetime, like that's so good. Like
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
so
You
much
get to
good
use it
came out of
now.
that. So yeah, definitely don't resonate on any past lives that have any like negative connotations, because I think there is a greater good that we've carried from it.
I totally agree. I think that's really important to relieve people with, or like let them know, like don't worry about it.
And then just to end, I do want to ask about our first incarnation. So what do you think the purpose of like our first soul incarnation and maybe even our last soul incarnation is?
Yeah. Okay. So the first incarnation, I definitely like that's the energy that we come into, like that is going to influence how we work through all of our other incarnations. So, like, knowing your first incarnation, like, it's not necessarily necessary, but it's helpful because that your first incarnation is going to it's going to influence everything you do. And your last incarnation is generally really significant from what I've seen and heard. It's like your last incarnation is where you finally get to fully be an embodiment of everything you've learned, and it's like where you bring in so much to the earth, or what, like your last incarnation on earth, let's say, is where you bring in so much, like to help or to change or to ascend. But then I don't know if I believe that we fully have a last incarnation anywhere. I guess our last incarnation in total would just be when we go to spirit form and we're sitting somewhere in the astral dimensional planes as a guide. But then couldn't we like can it ever really end? Like, what if we have our last incarnation on earth and then we go and we're in the astral plane for 2000 years, and then the earth or another earth like planet is like really in need of something, and we're like, okay, well, I guess I gotta go incarnate in a body again.
Like
Like,
vacation's over, like
yeah, like I
back
thought
to
I was
work.
done with this, but so couldn't there always be a new incarnation? Right. So I don't know. Is there ever really a last one?
That's true. I didn't consider, because I don't think the multiverse will ever cease to exist in its entirety. Like
Me
Earth
neither.
definitely has its own timeline, and our Earth as we know it, just scientifically, like look at
Mhm.
scientific stats, like it's going to cease to exist one day. But like Earth was formed, our Milky Way was formed. That means other galaxies are forming all the time. Other places that like we're able to inhabit are forming all the time. So
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like what if we're all sitting at our councils and then one day like a new Earth comes? New
exactly.
Earth. Oh my God, the symbolism. But yeah, a new Earth comes and it's just like, okay, you, like get back there.
Yeah. So I don't think, like, yeah, eventually we'll all have a last incarnation on earth, but will we ever have a last incarnation anywhere? Probably not. Because like you said, it's always going to exist. There's always new things.
And those are the philosophical thoughts we're going to leave everyone with. Thanks for coming back to the intuition age. It was such a pleasure.
This was so much fun. I hope that everyone is like interested in all of this, because we've talked a lot, but it's so interesting. I could continue to talk for another like 2 hours, honestly.
I'm saying we're like geeking out over past
We are.
lives. I want to
It's
talk
so
more.
interesting.
Yeah, but like last time, we'll share your links in the show notes. And if you have new ones, we'll definitely place them too. And then I do want to link our episode that we did together on your podcast. And hopefully
Absolutely.
everyone tunes into that too. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed our past life summaries and just our thoughts on past lives. And Shannon, again, you're welcome back anytime. Maybe next time we could talk about quantum leaping.
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
If you feel enlightened and inspired by the intuition age, I would be eternally grateful if you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. This platform truly allows me to act as a catalyst for expanding and elevating human consciousness, both individually and collectively. All shares, downloads, and subscribes help me distribute these divine topics to even more conscious souls. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you at the next episode.